The stars outside the prison window were pale, distant, and cold. They did not shine, they watched. Leora pressed her forehead against the glass, feeling the weight of the metal walls surrounding her. Her hands, bound in thick restraints, trembled slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. She had been captured hours ago, after the failed rebellion on her home mining colony. The aliens had been fast, ruthless, and precise. Still, something inside her refused to break. Leora was not an ordinary human. She was small, yes, but her mind was sharp. Her quick thinking had saved lives before, and she refused to let it fail her now. The prison smelled of metal, oil, and something she could not name, a mix of alien biology and machinery. It was oppressive, suffocating, and yet alive, as if the walls themselves breathed and watched her every move. The Zaran aliens were unlike anything humans had seen. They were tall, with elongated limbs and reflective eyes that never blinked. Their skin shimmered faintly in the prison's artificial lights, like wet stone. They moved in silence, their presence always unnerving, a constant reminder that she was trapped in their world. From the corner of her eye, Leora noticed a cage near the center of the holding room. Inside it, an alien beast paced restlessly. Its muscles rippled under dark, glistening skin. Its claws scraped the floor, and its eyes, though animalistic, seemed different. Leora couldn't put it into words, but it was watching everything her, the Zaran. The prison itself with an intelligence that made her uneasy. She had seen the beast in the colony before capture. It was used to hunt down escaped humans, to terrorize and enforce the aliens' control. But there was something in its movement tonight that was unusual. It didn't lunge at the guards when they approached. It didn't roar or snap. Instead, it paused, tilted its head, and sniffed the air, as if it could sense more than just hunger. The first alien came closer to her cell. Leora felt the metallic restraints tighten around her wrists. She held her breath, counting the seconds. She had learned long ago that fear was an ally, not a chain. The alien's long fingers hovered near her, but it did not touch her. It was studying her, not like it was going to hurt her, but as if it was curious. Leora's mind worked quickly. She scanned the room, noting the positions of guards, the layout of the metal bars, and the patrol patterns. Every detail mattered. Humans were often underestimated, and that underestimation could be exploited. The alien beast moved closer to the edge of its cage, watching the interaction. Leora noticed how its eyes followed every motion. There was a rhythm to its movements, almost like a counting of beats. It paused now and then, sniffed, then resumed its pacing. It wasn't acting like a predator, it was waiting. The aliens did not notice. Their attention was on her, as always. Leora used this to her advantage. She shifted slightly in her restraints, testing their strength. Her fingers barely brushed the edge of a loose panel on the wall. A small hope sparkled inside her. If she could reach it, even slightly, she might be able to trigger something, anything to help her escape. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of clicking boots. Another Zaran approached, carrying tools she did not recognize. The creature had a smooth, dark surface, like liquid metal molded into shape. It was designed for precision, she realized, built for control rather than brute force. They opened a small panel in her cell. Her first instinct was to tense. But then she remembered what her father had taught her long ago. Fear is sharp, but courage is sharper. She took a slow, careful breath, calming herself. Her mind was already running through possibilities, what the panel might do, what she could reach, what she could use. The alien's tools hovered over her restraints. Leora imagined her escape in vivid detail. She would distract the guards, trigger the panel, and the beast, if it could be trusted, might act as her unlikely ally. She forced herself to appear helpless, hiding the calculations and plans swirling in her head. The guard leaned closer. Its eyes reflected her own fear back at her, but she held its gaze. She noticed the alien beast shift, responding to some invisible cue. Its tail twitched, claws scraping softly against the cage floor. Leora felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps it was aware of her thoughts, at least in part. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time was distorted in the sterile, metallic room. Every sound felt amplified: the scraping of claws, the soft hum of the walls, the quiet breathing of her own chest. The aliens continued their work, unaware of the silent drama unfolding in the cage across the room. Leora shifted again, this time just enough to let her fingers brush the loose panel. She felt a small click. That was all. Nothing else happened. But the click told her one thing. She could interact with the environment. She could affect the prison. And that realization sparked a fire inside her, a small rebellion waiting to ignite. The alien beast. Caliph stopped pacing suddenly. Its eyes locked onto hers. She held the gaze, trying not to flinch. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to the two of them, the human and the alien predator. Neither spoke, yet a silent understanding passed between them. Leora realized that Caliph, despite being trained to hunt humans, was hesitating. Its instincts were clashing with something else, something she could not yet name. The guards finally left the room, satisfied that their work was complete for now. Leora exhaled slowly, relief and tension intertwining. She knew she had little time. The panel, the beast, and her own cunning were her only tools. Kayla sat down on its haunches, tilting its head as it studied her. Leora took a chance. She mimed a small, subtle gesture toward the panel. The beast's eyes followed. It understood. Or at least, it was curious enough to watch. That was enough for now. She settled back against the wall, forcing herself to rest. Her mind raced with plans and contingencies. She knew the aliens would return, that they would not wait long before continuing their experiments. But for the first time, she felt the tiniest spark of control. The spark of hope. Outside, the stars continued their cold vigil. The universe was vast and different, and dangerous, but humans had always survived in impossible situations. And Leora, small, clever, and determined, was about to prove that even here, in the heart of the enemy's prison, humans could find a way. She glanced once more at Caliph. The beast tilted its head in response, almost as if it were agreeing with her silent vow. Not today. Not now. I will survive. For the first time since capture, Leora allowed herself a small, private smile. The game had begun, and in this game, humans were always more dangerous than they seemed. The prison was quiet after the guards left, but silence never meant safety. Leora kept her eyes on Caliph, the alien beast, pacing in its cage. Its muscles flexed under smooth, dark skin, and every movement radiated strength. Leora had learned to watch it closely. Strength without control could be dangerous, but intelligence coupled with observation could be an ally. She shifted slightly, testing the panel she had touched yesterday. A faint click echoed in the empty room. That tiny sound gave her hope. Maybe she could use it. Maybe she could turn the alien's hesitation into an advantage. The prison might be large, but even the largest cages had weak points. Every door, every wall, every control panel had a flaw. Humans had always learned to see them and exploit them. Kayla stopped pacing abruptly. Its head tilted toward the wall where the panel sat slightly ajar. Leora caught the motion and mimed a small gesture, a subtle point, a tiny nod. The beast's eyes flickered. It did not move closer, not yet, but it watched, almost knowingly. She remembered her father's words from long ago on the colony: animals sense fear and courage. Never underestimate either. Leora had always believed it, but she never thought it would apply to an alien predator designed to hunt humans. Yet, here it was. Caliph seemed conflicted. Hours passed. The sun outside the prison, nor the alien version of a sun, rose and set in pale waves of light through small observation windows. Leora remained still, testing small movements and noting the patrol patterns of the guards. She observed every step, every shift in their rhythm. Caliph's behavior became more unpredictable. It scraped the floor with claws, sniffed the air, and stared at her without blinking. It was as if the beast could sense her intent, but not fully understand it. Leora realized that her challenge was not just to survive, it was to teach Caliph, slowly, that she was not prey. She began small. During the brief moments when the guard's attention faltered, she gestured toward the loose panel again, a subtle motion. The beast's eyes followed. She tapped her fingers lightly against her restraints, creating a pattern Caliph seemed to notice. Small patterns, repeated actions, they were signals, unspoken and simple. Days or what felt like days passed in this routine of silence and observation. Leora had little to eat and even less comfort, but she focused on training the alien beast in her own way. Not with commands, not with threats, but with gestures, movements, and patience. She mimicked actions that would allow Caliph to notice weak spots in the cage, weak points in the wall, even small flaws in the security system. The guards still came and went, unaware of the slow changes taking place. Caliph scratched at a support beam, inadvertently loosening it slightly. Leora's heart raced. That beam could collapse if she used it carefully. A small opportunity, but opportunities were rare in this prison. And humans had always learned to act when even the smallest one appeared. One evening, Leora noticed the tension in the guards. They were restless, speaking in their alien language in low, clipped tones. Something was coming in inspection, a new experiment, perhaps another test. The room felt colder. She shivered, not from temperature, but from anticipation. Caliph sensed it too. Its tail lashed softly, ears flicking toward the sound of approaching footsteps. Leora decided it was time to test her plan. She tapped the panel again, this time louder, creating a small vibration. Caliph paused, then turned toward her. Its eyes glimmered with intelligence or maybe curiosity. She mimed a movement, lift, push, shift. The beast watched, then pawed at the floor near the panel. Nothing significant happened yet, but she felt the spark of progress. Caliph was learning. Later, when the guards left, Leora allowed herself to speak softly. Not words they could not understand, but a quiet hum, a rhythm. Caliph's head tilted again, its ears pricking at the sound. She repeated the pattern. The beast responded, a subtle change in posture, a slow shift closer to the panel. The next few hours were a delicate dance. Leora learned to use the smallest movements to communicate. Caliph was cautious, testing the limits of her intentions. They moved almost silently, carefully, each aware of the guards' unpredictable patrols. Then the first sign of chaos appeared. One of the guards approached Caliph's cage with a piece of meat, something to feed the beast. Caliph stiffened. Its eyes narrowed, focused not on the food, but on Leora. She felt a rush of relief. The beast had chosen its side, or at least, chosen not to follow orders blindly. The guard opened the cage door slightly, expecting Caliph to take the food. Instead, the beast stepped back, refusing the offering. Its growl was low and warning, directed at the alien, not at Leora. For the first time, Leora realized the depth of their connection. Caliph could think independently, and maybe, just maybe, it could help her. Days passed. Leora and Caliph continued their silent training. Every loose panel, every weak wall segment, every small mechanical flaw became part of a plan. Leora could see the calculations forming in Caliph's movements. The beast was no longer just a creature, it was a partner, responding to her signals, testing her intentions, and preparing silently for the moment when action would be necessary. And then, a new challenge arrived. A high-ranking Zarn entered the prison. Its eyes scanned the room like a predator of predators. It paused at Caliph's cage, narrowing its gaze. Leora felt a chill. This alien was not ordinary. Its presence radiated authority and danger. She knew that if Caliph reacted too soon, both of them could be lost. Caliph stiffened, growled, but did not attack. It was waiting, listening, calculating. Leora mimed a small signal to stay calm. The high-ranking alien studied the beast, then looked at her. Leora held her gaze, resisting the urge to flinch. The alien seemed annoyed by her courage, but did not act immediately. Finally, it left, but not before tightening the patrol schedule. The room would be under heavier watch now. Leora felt the pressure, but she also felt the spark of opportunity. The more the aliens underestimated humans and even Caliph, the better it would be for her. Humans thrive when underestimated. It was part of their nature, their survival instinct. That night, Leora allowed herself a small smile. She crawled as close to Caliph's cage as she could, whispering gestures and patterns. The beast responded with a subtle nod, tilting its head as if understanding her unspoken words. They were partners now, united by circumstance and shared intelligence. She rested her head against the cold metal wall, thinking about the colony she had left behind. the people she had failed to save, and the ones she might still protect. She knew escape would not be easy, but for the first time, she felt a true possibility. Caleth's presence, once terrifying, had become a lifeline. Together, they could challenge the impossible. Outside, the stars continued their silent vigil. Cold, distant, and unyielding. But inside the prison, a plan was quietly forming, one that would turn fear into power, observation into strategy, and patience into action. Leora and Caleth were ready to sow the seeds of chaos, one calculated move at a time. The quiet before the storm had begun. The prison was quieter than usual, but quiet was always deceptive. Leora moved carefully in her restraints, eyes fixed on the pattern she had memorized over the past days. Every corner of the room had been observed, every guard's step counted. Her mind raced with possibilities. Humans were clever in desperate situations. They could adapt, improvise, and overcome odds that seemed impossible. And she was about to prove it. Caleth, the alien beast, watched her intently. Its dark, glossy skin glimmered in the dim light, and every muscle in its powerful body seemed poised to act. Leora had learned to read its movements. A slight shift in posture, a twitch of a tail, a flick of its claws, these were signals. Not just instinct. Caleth had become more than a predator. It was an ally, one that could respond to her plans if she guided it correctly. She focused on the loose panel she had discovered earlier. It was small, just a thin piece of metal concealing the controls for the cell doors. But it was enough. If she could manipulate it carefully, she could unlock minor sections of the prison or at least create distractions. Leora examined it with precision, twisting her wrist just enough to brush it with her fingers. Caleth padded silently to her side, observing. She mimed a motion, push, then release. The beast's claws tapped lightly on the floor, mimicking her gesture. Leora's heart raced. It was responding exactly as she hoped. She had taught it a small part of the plan, and now it was executing it without question. She glanced at the guards patrolling the corridor. They moved with mechanical precision, unaware that the smallest mistakes could cost them control. Leora had noticed that even the most disciplined aliens sometimes overlooked details. That was where humans thrived, seeing what others ignored. Leora began assembling her tools from scraps around the cell. Pieces of metal, broken wiring, and parts from her restraints formed a crude but functional system. It was not much, but she knew it could trigger minor disruptions. A spark here, a small movement there, and the guard's routine would be interrupted. Caleth growled softly, a warning. Leora nodded. They would not act recklessly. Precision was key. One wrong move and the entire plan could fail. She tapped the panel again. This time, a faint whirring sound came from the wall in response to her manipulation. The system was reacting. Small, but promising. The next step required timing. Leora watched the guard approaching Caleth's cage. She shifted slightly in her restraints, sending a subtle signal. Caleth responded, tilting its head, then pawing at the floor near the panel. Sparks flew as metal scraped against metal, and the small vibration caused the door of an adjacent holding cell to rattle. The guard froze. Leora held her breath, watching the alien's reaction. It was confusion, not fear and opportunity. Using the distraction, she tapped the panel again, this time stronger. A small section of the lock system clicked and disengaged. One cell door swung open slightly. Not enough for anyone to escape, but enough to create uncertainty. Caleth moved closer, watching her gestures. Its intelligence was astonishing. It could respond to complex patterns, understand cause and effect, and even anticipate consequences. Leora realized that this creature, once a tool of terror, was now a partner in her ingenuity. Together, they were creating small, precise chaos inside the prison. The guard recovered and approached Caleth with a tray of food. The beast stiffened but did not attack. Leora gestured subtly. Wait, watch. Caleth obeyed. The guard, frustrated, muttered in the alien tongue and left. The door clicked shut behind it. But the vibration from Leora's manipulations had already begun to spread through the system. Leora felt a thrill of possibility. The prison was not invincible. Its walls were solid, its technology advanced. but it had not accounted for human cunning or an unexpected ally. She began sketching a plan in her mind, distractions, mechanical triggers, and Calith's raw strength combined into a precise sequence. That night, she rested her head against the cold wall, thinking through every movement. Humans had always survived impossible odds through ingenuity. The Zorn had underestimated her species, and underestimated the unpredictable intelligence of Calith. The following day, Leora tested the plan in small increments. She tapped panels, nudged loose debris, and signaled Calith with subtle gestures. The beast responded perfectly, creating disturbances at exactly the right moments. Guards paused, checked their systems, and became distracted. Leora watched, noting patterns, calculating the next step. She began using scraps from her restraints as triggers. Wires and small metal fragments created miniature circuits, capable of sending electric jolts through control panels or setting minor alarms to go off in other parts of the prison. Calith's presence amplified the effect. Its growls, scratches, and strength caused vibrations that enhanced the disturbances. By midday, small sections of the prison were reacting unpredictably. Guards ran from room to room, trying to restore control. Leora smiled quietly. They had no idea that this was not random failure. It was deliberate human ingenuity, amplified by Calith's precision. Her mind drifted briefly to the colonies she had left behind. Friends, neighbors, people she had fought beside, they had all been caught or killed in the initial raid. But she refused to feel guilt. Survival and strategy were more useful than grief here. She would save herself first, then others if she could. That was the human way, clever, adaptive, and determined. Leora's next step required coordination. She tapped the panel in a precise rhythm, a sequence she had memorized. Calith mirrored the motions with its claws, creating simultaneous disruptions into separate parts of the prison. Sparks flew, alarms rang faintly, and doors rattled. The guards shouted, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. This was more than chaos. This was a demonstration of control. Leora realized that humans did not just survive by brute force, they survived by thinking, planning, and adapting faster than any opponent. Calith's power was raw, but she provided strategy. Together, they were a force neither alien nor beast could anticipate. Later, during a rare quiet moment, Leora studied Calith closely. It had scratches from its time in the cage, scars that hinted at past fights. Yet its eyes reflected intelligence, awareness, and perhaps respect. Leora understood something essential. To survive, she needed to trust this creature. And Calith, in turn, needed her guidance. They were partners now, not predator and prey, but allies in a silent war against the prison. She began creating more complex signals, patterns, rhythms, even small gestures that Calith could interpret. The beast's learning curve was astonishing. Each day it became more responsive, more precise, more aware of her intentions. Leora's hope grew. She realized that the seemingly impossible could become possible. Humans, after all, had always been underestimated and always had survived against odds far greater than this. By the end of the day, several sections of the prison were subtly compromised. Leora had learned which doors were weak, which panels could be triggered, and which guards were predictable. Calith had learned her gestures, her signals, and the consequences of each action. Together, they had created the first stage of a larger plan, a plan that could eventually turn the entire prison upside down. As night fell, Leora rested her head on the cold metal wall, exhausted but determined. Outside, the stars continued to shine, indifferent and distant. But inside the prison, hope flickered, a small, dangerous, and human hope. Leora knew that the coming days would require courage, strategy, and patience. She could not fight the aliens alone, but with Calith, she had a chance. And humans, she reminded herself, were never powerless when they had cunning, resourcefulness, and determination on their side. For the first time since her capture, Leora allowed herself to imagine freedom not just for herself, but for anyone who might survive the prison with her. She glanced at Calith, who tilted its head in response, eyes glinting with awareness. They had formed a bond stronger than fear, stronger than instinct. Together, They were planning something far greater than either could do alone. The seeds of chaos had been planted. The prison's walls had never seemed so silent and yet so tense. Leora crouched near the loose panel, fingers hovering over the controls she had tested countless times. Kayla sat beside her, muscles coiled, eyes fixed on the approaching guards. For days, they had prepared, observed, and waited. And now, the moment had arrived. Leora counted silently in her head. 15 minutes until the scheduled interrogation. 15 minutes to turn careful planning into action. She tapped the panel once, then twice. Sparks jumped faintly from the loose wiring, illuminating the cold, metallic corridor. Caliph mirrored her movement, a subtle pawing that amplified the vibrations. The effect was immediate. In another part of the prison, an alarm light blinked. A door in the holding section rattled, then slid slightly open on its own. Guards rushed toward it, shouting in the alien tongue. Confusion spread like wildfire. Leora's lips curved into a small smile. The first phase of their plan was working. Caliph shifted forward, nudging the loose panel with one claw. The metal groaned, then moved just enough to trigger the control sequence. Doors began clicking open, alarms flashed intermittently, and the usually predictable prison system spiraled into minor chaos. Leora's heart raced. Humans had survived far greater odds by turning opportunity into advantage, and now, she was proving it. A guard appeared at the end of the corridor, stopping dead when the door beside him slid open unexpectedly. Leora pressed her forehead to the wall, holding her breath. Caliph growled softly, low and controlled a warning, not a threat. The beast understood precision. A single wrong movement could end everything. Another door rattled. Sparks flew from a nearby panel, sending a sharp sound echoing down the corridor. The guards scrambled, their routine shattered. Leora signaled to Caliph with a subtle hand movement. The beast nodded slightly, pawing again at the loose metal. The vibration shifted a second set of doors, locking some and unlocking others. The prisoners in adjacent cells looked around, confused and hopeful, sensing opportunity. Leora realized that timing was everything. She tapped the panel rhythmically, sending sequences of vibrations that Caliph mirrored. Each pulse disrupted multiple systems. Energy lights flickered. Mechanical doors slammed and clanged. The guards' frustration grew, but their training did not prepare them for unpredictability, the kind only human ingenuity could create. The first major test came when a group of guards rushed toward the largest holding chamber. Caliph leapt from its cage, powerful and precise. Not recklessly, Leora had trained it for this. Its strength allowed it to push open the heavy door, creating a barrier between the guards and the prisoners. Leora tapped the panel again, opening additional passages to guide the chaos. The combination was brilliant. Caliph's raw power and Leora's careful manipulation created a chain reaction. Guards became disoriented, prisoners cautiously moved toward openings, and the prison system itself seemed to fight against the aliens. Leora's ingenuity had turned the prison's strengths into weaknesses. She guided Caliph through the corridor with gestures. The beast moved like water, fluid and controlled, nudging doors, creating blockades, and responding instantly to her signals. Together, they were a team, a single unit acting in precise harmony. The Czarn had never imagined that one human and one alien beast could manipulate the entire system so effectively. Leora's mind raced as she considered the next phase. She needed to expand the chaos beyond the main corridors. Small panels she had tested earlier controlled minor energy conduits. A spark here, a disruption there, and entire sections of the prison would be immobilized. Caliph's growls added a layer of psychological confusion. Guards hesitated when the beast appeared suddenly in their peripheral vision, unsure whether it would attack or simply block their path. 15 minutes, 10 minutes, she counted internally. Every pulse of the panel, every pawing movement of Caliph, every shift in the mechanical doors had to be perfectly timed. Humans had survived countless wars and conflicts by relying on timing and ingenuity. This was no different. Then came the moment of truth. The lead torture approached the main holding area. Leora watched, calculating every move. Caliph crouched low, tail twitching, waiting for her signal. With a small nod, she initiated the final sequence. Sparks flew, Lights flickered violently, and a series of doors slammed simultaneously. Separating the lead alien from its backup guards, confusion erupted. The lead torturer shouted, signaling the other guards. But the sequence of doors and alarms created a wall of chaos. Caliph stepped forward, blocking a hallway, forcing the guards to retreat. Leora tapped the panel one final time, releasing energy conduits that caused a controlled short circuit. The alarms screamed, lights went dark in sections, and the prison's normally rigid order fell apart. Prisoners began moving carefully through openings, guided by Leora's subtle gestures and Caliph's imposing presence. They were silent, precise, and cautious, not panicked. Humans thrived under pressure, and now they were using every ounce of strategy and cunning to exploit the chaos. The lead torturer lunged forward, attempting to regain control. Leora had anticipated this. She signaled Caliph, who leapt with speed and precision, creating a barrier between the alien and the prisoners. The torturer paused, frustrated, but could not pass. Leora tapped the panel to lock a door behind the torturer, isolating it further. Small explosions of light and sound continued across the prison as Leora's manipulations triggered more systems. Doors opened and closed at random intervals, lights flickered on and off, and guards were forced to divide their attention. Caliph's movements amplified the effect. The beast's strength was raw, but guided by human strategy, it became unstoppable. Leora's mind worked like a machine. Every disruption had a purpose, every signal had a meaning. She was not just surviving, she was taking control of the situation. Humans had always been underestimated, and she intended to prove why. The prison was built for discipline, but discipline was powerless against creativity and cunning. By now, several prisoners were following Leora's signals. They moved quietly, helping to prop doors open or nudge small panels into place. Chaos was spreading beyond the initial corridor. The aliens, trained for control and order, were losing their grip. The ingenuity of one human and the cooperation of an alien beast had turned the tide. Caliph growled, low and resonant, signaling a nearby group of guards. Leora pointed, guiding its path. The beast moved in a controlled sweep, forcing the guards into a corner. The humans used this opportunity to slip past, moving towards safer areas of the prison. Every movement was deliberate, every action calculated. The lead torturer, now separated from its main force, realized the situation was spiraling out of control. Its eyes darted to Leora, then to Caliph. It understood, too late, that its assumptions about humans were wrong. Leora's intelligence, her careful planning, and her partnership with Caliph had created a situation the Zarin could not anticipate. Leora glanced at the timer, in her mind 5 minutes to the scheduled interrogation. They had exceeded expectations. The prison systems were in disarray, guards were confused, and prisoners were moving with cautious hope. The foundation had been shaken. Humans had done what humans did best: adapt, improvise, and strike unpredictably. She tapped the panel one final time, sending a pulse through the prison's energy conduits. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and lights flickered. Caliph roared, a powerful, resonant sound that reverberated through the metal halls. The sound was terrifying and inspiring all at once. Guards stumbled, unsure whether to attack or flee. The prisoners moved decisively, following Leora's guidance. For a brief moment, everything froze: the prisoners, the guards, Caliph, and Leora herself. Then the controlled chaos resumed, spreading outward. Leora's strategy had worked. The prison was no longer a place of control, it was a labyrinth of unpredictability. As the dust settled and sparks faded, Leora took a deep breath. Caliph leaned close, its eyes meeting hers. The understanding between them was clear. They had succeeded. The first major step toward freedom was complete outside the prison. The stars shone cold and indifferent, but inside, human ingenuity had created something new: hope, freedom, power. Leora knew this was only the beginning. The firestorm had been set in motion, and there was no turning back. The storm would rage. The aliens would scramble, and humans would fight. And Leora, clever, patient, and determined, would lead the way. The seeds of chaos had grown into a wildfire. The prison was no longer orderly. Doors hung open at odd angles, Alarms blared in uneven rhythms, and lights flickered like stars struggling to shine. Leora crouched near the panel she had been manipulating for days, eyes scanning the Carters. Caliph moved silently beside her, muscles tense but controlled. Together, they had created chaos, but now they had to turn it into freedom. Prisoners peeked from their cells, wide-eyed but cautious. Leora gestured for them to stay calm, to move slowly and follow her signals. She had learned one important truth in the prison. Humans thrive when they plan carefully, not when they panicked. Even in the midst of chaos, they could survive if they stayed intelligent and precise. Caliph let out a low growl, a warning and a signal all in one. Leora nodded, understanding perfectly. The guards were regrouping, trying to restore control, but their panic was spreading. The unpredictable movements of prisoners, combined with the random malfunctions she had triggered, were overwhelming the aliens. Leora's mind raced. They needed to escape the central Carters, where most of the guards were concentrated. There were service tunnels, narrow passages that the aliens rarely checked. She had observed them carefully during the past days, and knew exactly how to guide the prisoners there. One wrong move, and they could be trapped, but Caliph's presence gave them strength. "Follow me," she whispered softly, motioning to the first few prisoners. The beast moved ahead, nudging doors open with controlled power, clearing paths without unnecessary violence. The humans followed silently, careful to avoid detection, yet emboldened by the creature that had once been a predator. The lead torturer had recovered from the initial chaos. It stormed toward the corridor, shouting orders in its harsh tongue. Leora froze for a moment, then quickly signaled Caliph. The beast leapt into position, blocking the torturer's path with an imposing stance. The alien paused, confused and wary. Leora pressed the panel, and a nearby door clanged shut behind the torturer, isolating it from its support. The prisoners moved swiftly. Every step had been planned, every action coordinated. Leora's ingenuity had created openings, and Caliph's strength had turned those openings into barriers. Together, they had taken control of the chaos they had created. In a side corridor, Leora found a small control room she had been watching for days. It contained systems that monitored the entire prison, locks, energy conduits, and surveillance panels. If she could manipulate these systems, they could secure the rest of the prison and prevent the guards from regrouping. Caliph stayed at the entrance, alert and ready. Leora worked quickly, using her knowledge of technology and her human intuition. She connected wires, tapped panels, and rerouted energy flows. Sparks flew, alarms blared again, but this time under her control. Doors locked and unlocked strategically, cutting off guards and opening paths for prisoners. A group of guards appeared at the end of the hall. Leora signaled Caliph. The beast moved like a shadow, using its sheer presence to block the hallway. The guards hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Leora tapped the panel, and lights flickered in a pattern that disoriented the aliens further. The prisoners slipped past, guided by her instructions and Caliph's intimidation. Leora's heart pounded. Every move had to be perfect. One misstep, one delay, and the plan could collapse. But the human spirit was unyielding. She reminded herself that humans had survived worse, fought harder, and won against impossible odds. And now, she was proving that once again. The lead torturer had regrouped and was attempting to reach the control room. Leora anticipated this. She tapped the panel again, triggering a sequence that closed multiple doors, creating a maze between the torturer and her position. Caliph growled and blocked the remaining passage, ensuring the alien could not advance. Prisoners were gathering in small groups, moving toward the service tunnels. Leora guided them, signaling paths and safe spots. Caliph moved among them, ensuring that no one strayed too far, protecting the weakest and guiding the strongest. Together, they were a force no one had anticipated. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. But inside the prison, humans were reclaiming control. Leora realized that survival was not just about strength, it was about courage, ingenuity, and collaboration. Caliph had provided power, she had provided strategy, and the prisoners had provided movement and opportunity. The final obstacle was the central security hub, where the main systems were controlled. If they could reach it, they could lock the remaining doors, disable alarms, and fully take control of the prison. Leora calculated the timing carefully. Caliph moved ahead, creating a diversion that drew guards away from the hub. Leora and a small group of prisoners followed through a side passage she had identified earlier. The control room was tense. Panels blinked with erratic lights, and alarms continued to wail in the distance. Leora approached the main console, working quickly. She rerouted power, locked doors, and shut down the remaining security measures. With a few final taps and adjustments, the prison systems fell into human control. Outside, guards were retreating, confused and unable to access doors. The prisoners emerged from hidden passages, guided by Leora and Caliph. The humans had turned chaos into opportunity, and now they were stepping into freedom. Caliph roared, a deep, resonant sound that echoed through the metal halls. It was a sound of triumph, warning, and power. The remaining guards paused, unsure how to respond. The beast had become more than a predator, it had become a symbol of resistance. An ally that had changed the course of the conflict. Leora allowed herself a moment to breathe. The prison was in human hands. The prisoners were free, or at least, as free as they could be within the outer walls. She looked at Caliph, who tilted its head as if acknowledging her success. There was a bond now, forged through strategy, patience, and trust. A small group of humans approached Leora, gratitude in their eyes. They had witnessed her courage, her intelligence, and her ability to coordinate not just people, but even a powerful alien beast. Leora nodded, signaling calm and focus. They had survived the impossible, but they still had to get out of the prison entirely. Using the knowledge she had gained, Leora guided the prisoners through hidden service tunnels toward the outer walls. Caliph moved ahead, breaking minor obstacles and ensuring that no alien guard could intercept them. Step by step, they moved closer to freedom. At last, they reached the outer perimeter. Human ships, alerted by Leora's prior signals, hovered silently in orbit. Rescue had arrived. The prisoners gathered, exhausted but alive, and prepared to board. Caliph paused at the edge, its powerful body silhouetted against the dim light of the prison. Leora stepped forward, extending a hand. The beast approached, nudging her gently, acknowledging the bond they shared. One by one, the prisoners boarded the ships. Leora ensured that every human was safe before turning back to the prison. Caliph followed. Together, they looked back at the complex they had conquered. Sparks still flew from damaged systems, alarms blinked faintly, and shadows moved through the corridors, but it no longer mattered. Humans had triumphed. Leora finally boarded the last ship, Caliph by her side. The engines hummed, lifting them away from the prison. The stars outside were cold and distant, but inside the ship, warmth and hope filled the cabin. The humans had survived, adapted, and triumphed not through brute force alone, but through ingenuity, courage, and the unlikely alliance with a powerful alien creature. As the ship sped toward safety, Leora looked at Caliph. The beast had been an enemy, a tool of terror, but it had also become an ally. Their bond was unspoken but unbreakable. In the face of impossible odds, humans had prevailed, showing that intelligence, patience, and courage could overcome even the most powerful adversaries. The stars stretched infinitely ahead, indifferent to human struggle. Yet, for the first time, Leora felt a deep satisfaction. Humans had fought, survived, and won. And she, small but clever, had turned chaos into victory. The universe was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but humans had always found a way. And now, with Caliph at her side, Leora knew they could face whatever came next. Together, they had proven the impossible was possible. The stars watched in silence. But inside the ship, hope and determination burned brighter than any light in the galaxy. Humans had triumphed.